Dipa Ma, Part 3, Dipa Ma's Legacy. Chapter 11, 10 Lessons to Live By. The story of Dipa Ma's spiritual unfolding is the archetypal tale of all who seek the way. The stages it describes, setting forth, making a commitment, facing and overcoming difficulties, finding freedom, and sharing one's discoveries with the world, closely parallel those of the Buddha's own journey of transformation. After his great awakening under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha enunciated the Four Noble Truths. First, that suffering exists and is in fact the hallmark of all conditioned existence. Second, that its cause is attachment. Third, that it is possible to end suffering. And fourth, that there is a path, which he spelled out in detail, that leads away from suffering to the cherished goal of liberation. Buddhist practice, simply put, is about ending suffering, for ourselves and for all beings. It is this implicit promise that our own suffering can cease that first brings many of us to meditation practice. And it is Dipa Ma's life example that can give us the confidence to set forth on this journey. A woman, a mother, a householder, Dipa Ma makes the Buddha's path seem accessible and the great goal of freedom attainable in this very life. What follows are some of the lessons we can derive from Dipa Ma's essential teachings. May they be of help to you in your own journey of liberation. Lesson 1. Choose a meditation practice and stick with it. Quote, if you want to progress in meditation, stay with one technique. For those beginning the spiritual journey, Dipa Ma was adamant about commitment to one style of meditation. Don't give up and don't jump around from practice to practice. Find a technique that suits you and keep going until you find your edge, the point where difficulties start to arise. A common mistake many Western spiritual seekers make is to interpret difficulties as a problem with a particular practice. Then, when the going gets tough, the tough go, quote, spiritual shopping. From the vantage point of that uncomfortable edge, some other practice always looks better. Maybe I should do Tibetan chanting or Sufi dancing. In fact, difficulties are usually a reliable sign that the practice is working. Take Dipa Ma's advice to heart. Stick with the practice you've chosen through difficulty and doubt, through inspiration and stagnation, through the inevitable ups and downs. If you can stay committed to your practice through the darkest of times, wisdom will dawn. Lesson 2. Meditate every day. Quote, practice now. Don't think you will do more later. Dipa Ma stated firmly that if you want peace, you must practice regularly. She insisted that students find time for formal meditation practice every day, even if only for 5 minutes. If that proved impossible, she advised, at least when you are in bed at night, just notice one in-breath and one out-breath before you fall asleep. Besides formal sitting on the cushion, Dipa Ma urged students to make every moment of their lives a meditation. Many of them were busy people who found it difficult to set aside any time at all. Deepak Chaudhuri told Dipa Ma that it was impossible for him to practice because he had a very full schedule at the bank where he worked. He explained that he spent his workdays doing calculations, and that his job required him to be continually on the move, too busy and too restless even to think about meditation. Dipa Ma wouldn't hear of this. She insisted that meditation is always possible, that it is not separate from life. Quote, if you are busy, then busyness is the meditation, she told him. When you do calculations, know that you are doing calculations. Meditation is to know what you are doing. If you are rushing to the office, then you should be mindful of rushing. When you are eating, putting on your shoes, your socks, your clothes, you must be mindful. It is all meditation. Even when you are cutting your nails, put your mind there. Know that you are cutting your nails. End quote. For Dipa Ma, mindfulness wasn't something she did, it was who she was, all the time. The best attitude with which to approach this practice, she said, is with trust and willingness. When your mind wanders, simply begin again. Dipa Ma made it clear that there is nothing wrong with lapses of mindfulness. It happens to everyone. It is not a permanent problem. Don't worry, just start again. Always maintain your effort, patience, and faith. End quote. Even when you lose energy and motivation, she advised, just notice that. then shift to another mindfulness practice, walking, awareness in an ordinary activity, or sitting, in which more motivation is present. Lesson 3. Any situation is workable. Quote, each of us has enormous power. It can be used to help ourselves and help others. The Buddha left his wife and child in order to pursue his awakening. But Dipa Ma, out of necessity, found her path to freedom within the context of motherhood and ordinary household life. Her message to women, and men everywhere, is that you don't have to leave your family to reach high stages of spiritual understanding. You can be a spouse and parent and still pursue the Dharma. Even though initially she thought that she would have to give up her daughter to go to a monastery and practice in solitude, Dipa Ma came to understand that she could make her family part of the journey. Dipa Ma's approach was a radical inclusiveness, everything and the kitchen sink. There is nothing ultimately to cling to in this world, Dipa Ma taught, but we can make a good use of everything in it. Life is not to be rejected. It is here. And as long as it is here and we are here, we can make the best use of it. Dipa Ma wasn't attached to a particular teacher, place, or lifestyle. The whole world was her monastery. Sharon Kreider remembers, quote, at my idealistic age of 20, when I wanted to believe if I sat long enough with the right teacher, everything would be okay, she showed me it was about being awake to much more. She was an example of how to be a true mother to the world. To be a true mother is to feel life intensely. To be a true mother is to embrace whatever comes along, with awareness, and to make all circumstances my teachers. End quote. Lesson 4. Practice patience. Quote, patience is one of the most important virtues for developing mindfulness and concentration. End quote. Patience is forged by constantly meeting the edge. If you stay with your meditation practice, it is inevitable that difficulties will arise. In the most challenging situations, merely showing up, being present, may be all that is possible, and it may be enough. Kate Wheeler recounts the effects of this kind of patience in Dipa Ma's life. Quote, she had seen her mind go through every kind of suffering and was able to sit through it. Later, when she came out of that fire, there was something very determined, almost frightening, about how she could look at you, because she had seen herself. There was nowhere to hide. She exemplified that you can't just sit around thinking about getting enlightened. You have to take hold of these truths at the deepest levels of your heart. End quote. Dipa Ma's daughter talks about her mother's patience. Quote, the day before she died, Rishi, who was 11 at the time, was misbehaving when I was getting ready for work. I got very angry. I was trying to hit him, and he hid behind my mother. She wouldn't let me touch him. I was very upset, and cried to her, you don't know how mad he has made me. I want to punish him. My mother came to me with a mild, slow voice and said, Dipa, you are my daughter, and you too were silly once. I did not throw you out of the house for being silly. She talked about being affectionate and patient and talking slowly. It was a teaching I remember. End quote. Patience is a lifetime practice to be developed and refined over time. According to Dipa Ma, patience is essential in maturing the mind and therefore is one of the most important qualities to cultivate. Lesson 5. Free your mind. Your mind is all stories. Dipa Ma did not say that the mind is mostly stories. She said that there is nothing in the mind but stories. These are the personal dramas that create and maintain the sense of individual identity, who we are, what we do, what we are and are not capable of. Without our being aware of it, the endless series of such thoughts drives and limits our lives, and yet those stories are without substance. Dipa Ma challenged students' belief in their stories, their attachment to the stories. When someone said, I can't do that, she would ask, are you sure? Or who says? Or why not? She encouraged students to observe the stories, to see their emptiness, and to go beyond the limitations they impose. Let go of thinking, she urged. Meditation is not about thinking. At the same time, Dipa Ma taught that the mind is not an enemy to be gotten rid of. Rather, in the process of befriending the mind, in getting to know and accept it, it ceases to be a problem. Dipa Ma knew the freedom that follows that process. She lived in a state of thought-free awareness. In a group interview, Jack Kornfield innocently asked, "What is it like in your mind?" Dipa Ma smiled, closed her eyes, and quietly answered, "In my mind there are 3 things: concentration, loving-kindness, and peace." Jack, not sure if he had heard correctly, asked, "Is that all?" "Yes, that is all," Dipa Ma replied. The room was silent. Then there were a few sighs and quiet laughs, followed by Jack's barely audible whisper, "How wonderful." Lesson 6. Cool the fire of emotions. Quote, "Anger is a fire." When someone came to visit Dipa Ma, it didn't matter who it was, or what emotional state they were embroiled in, or what the circumstances were. Dipa Ma treated each person with complete, compassionate acceptance. Can we offer the same acceptance to the emotions that arise in us? Can we see our emotional states as visitors to be treated with kindness? Can we simply allow anger and other emotions to arise and pass away without reacting in ways that might be harmful? Quote, "A lot of incidents happen in daily life which are undesirable," Dipa Ma said. "Sometimes I experience some irritation, but my mind remains cool. Irritation comes and passes. My mind isn't disturbed by this. Anger is a fire, but I don't feel any heat. It comes and it dies right out." Dipa Ma's example is inspiring, but aren't there certain occasions when anger might be appropriate? Aren't there at least some situations when it's justified? For Dipa Ma, the answer was simple. No, anger is never justified. And she found ways to navigate through life without it. Sylvia Boorstein, who hosted Dipa Ma in her California home in 1980, said that her husband once challenged Dipa Ma on this point. Quote, "Dipa Ma was talking about the importance of maintaining tranquility and equanimity and non-anger, and my husband asked her, quote, 'Could you do that? What if someone were in some way to jeopardize your grandson Rishi, to threaten him?' I would stop him, of course," Dipa Ma replied, "but without anger." Lesson 7. Have fun along the way. Quote, "I am quite happy. If you come to meditate, you will also be happy." Jack Engler asked Dipa Ma about the place of fun in Buddhist practice. "This all sounds very gray," he said. "Getting rid of the passion, getting rid of anger, getting rid of desire. It seems like a kind of gray existence. Where's the juice?" "Oh, you don't understand," Dipa Ma burst out laughing. "There is so much sameness in ordinary life. We are always experiencing everything through the same set of lenses. Once greed, hatred, and delusion are gone, you see everything fresh and new all the time. Every moment is new. Life was dull before. Now, every day, every moment is full of taste and zest." Eric Kolvig remembers a group interview in which Dipa Ma's playfulness was expressed in an unforgettable image. Quote, "Dipa Ma's grandson became upset about something in the kitchen. He let the world know about it in the willful way that is common in 2-year-olds and dictators. She called him to the couch, where she laid him face down across her lap and comforted him by stroking his back and patting his tush, an age-appropriate blessing. A blue and yellow plastic toy dump truck lay beside them. With the profound serenity that never left her, Dipa Ma picked up the toy, placed it upside down on her head, and continued with the Dharma point she was making. She kept it on for the rest of the interview. That is how I will always remember her, patting the butt of the pacified child on her lap and discoursing on the Dharma with the blue and yellow dump truck on her head. Dipa Ma was a great spiritual warrior, the greatest I have known. On her head, that toy truck became the warrior's noble helmet. I say that only half in jest." End quote. Lesson 8. Simplify. Quote, "Live simply. A very simple life is good for everything. Too much luxury is a hindrance to practice." End quote. Even though Dipa Ma and her family lived in 2 tiny rooms, most visitors perceived those rooms as spacious and filled with light. One student observed that while we in the West think we need a lot of physical space, what Dipa Ma had was a vast psychic space. In every way, Dipa Ma lived in the greatest simplicity, She refrained from socializing. She did not engage in unnecessary talk. She didn't involve herself in other people's concerns, especially complaints. Her guideline for herself and her students was to live honestly and never blame others. Often Dipa Ma simply rested in silence. Quote, "Whenever I get time alone, I always turn my mind inward," she said. She did not spend time at any activity that was unnecessary to her life. Just as in meditation, we practice giving our full attention to one thing at a time, Dipa Ma did each thing completely without worrying about the next. Quote, "Thoughts of the past and future," she said, "spoil your time." In whatever she did, she was fully present, with ease, stillness, and simplicity. Dipa Ma encouraged her American students to simplify their material needs. In entering one household, she exclaimed, "Why so many things? Why so many pairs of shoes? Why 10 boxes of tea? Why? The accumulation of things only increases the want. You will not find any pleasure in plenty." End quote. Lesson 9. Cultivate the spirit of blessing. Quote, "If you bless those around you, this will inspire you to be attentive in every moment." Dipa Ma made of her life one continuous blessing. She offered blessings to all people. She blessed people from head to toe, blowing on them, chanting over them, stroking their hair. Dipa Ma invited a student who was an airline pilot to send loving kindness and blessings to his passengers and his colleagues while he was flying on the plane. She said it would make him more alert and make everyone happy as well. Her blessings were not reserved exclusively for people. Before boarding an airplane, she would bestow a blessing upon it. Riding in a car was an opportunity to offer a blessing not only to the vehicle, but also to the driver and to the men who pumped the gas. In one of her very first teachings in America, Dipa Ma said, "Meditation is love." Her spirit of blessing throughout the day was a living example of this teaching. She reminds us that true meditation is about how we care for ourselves and the world, and that ultimately, meditation is the continual movement of love, which, similar to one of Dipa Ma's blessings, encompasses nothing less than everyone and everything. Lesson 10. It's a circular journey. Meditation integrates the whole person. Buddhists speak metaphorically of leaving the world and coming back to the world. But in truth, there is neither leaving the world nor returning to it. We can't leave or return to our essence, to the rock-bottom truth of our being, because it is and has always been right here, hidden only by a thin film of ignorance. You don't discover it, rather you allow it to come forth, to emerge from the cloud of unknowing that surrounds you. Seeing into your true nature means realizing that you are inextricably bound to everyone and everything that lives, that you are, indeed, responsible for all that takes place in the world. The beauty of the spiritual journey is that the path invariably takes us back around to our point of departure. When Dipa Ma suffered her childlessness, her husband wisely suggested that she adopt everyone as her own child. But in those difficult days before she encountered the teachings that would transform her life, she was lost in sadness for what she lacked, trying to, quote, fill a hole. By the end of her life, though, Dipa Ma had indeed become a mother to all. In place of that hole that needed to be filled, there simply was a heart open to all. End of section.